Hello and welcome to this guide to Modern Horizons 2 Limited. This whole guide is available in the description below if you just want to look through all the archetypes and see all the pictures. If you don't have the time to listen to it, then you can just go right below and get it. Otherwise, let's just get started. So my name is Ask. I also go by the name Kemp, and I make a podcast in Danish about magic. I teach basic magic content to newer players, so our audience are usually newer players. So if you're an expert level player and looking for the newest tips to Modern Horizons 2 Limited, this is not for you. If you're a newer player, if you're drafting Modern Horizons 2 for the first time, if you're going to your pre-release and you want to have a better grasp of what do the archetypes do, what are some of the small tips and tricks, this might be for you. I'm going to try to explain as the best I can. This is a very difficult set, so it's also kind of a challenge for me, but I thought it was a really nice thing to do. So let's get right to it. First of all, I want to say my experience with the set has been, I've been drafting the set on Magic Online for the past week. I've been going through the spoilers, playing most of the archetypes, consuming a lot of content. And I have a decent win rate, about 60% in this format. But it's a very expensive format. It's very expensive to play online. It's very expensive to buy the cards. So a lot of people are only going to play this set maybe once or twice. And if you're one of those players, maybe this is for you, because you'll get a better understanding of what the archetypes and what you're supposed to do in the set. So we're going to start with the big picture, and then we'll go through some of the fixing mechanics in the set, what enables playing more colors, and then we're going to go through all the archetypes. And then lastly, we're going to go through just some 2-card combos that I've seen while drafting. This is mostly from drafting. I haven't played a lot of sealed, but hopefully my takeaways will help you, even though if you're going to your pre-release and it's sealed. So let's get right to it. So first of all, we have the big picture, and as I said, it's an expert level set. So there's around 40 mechanics, and I would just advise you to read the cards. Many times I've been playing this set for the past week, and the cards have done just slightly different things that I thought. So maybe it's just not, you think it's just creature tokens and it's all tokens. And I mean, there's just so many nuances from the cards. So just read the cards, because the set is difficult and there's so many things to keep track of. The second is that it's a very high power level. It's a very high synergy set. There's not a lot of unplayable cards. Most cards are actually quite good. So what you need to do is you have to find a way to maximize the power level of the cards, because otherwise your opponents will have just stronger decks than you. So try to find the synergy where it is and focus on creating great synergies with the cards. There's a lot of fixing, as I'll just talk about in a second, and so you can easily splash. And then the major themes, you have a lot of tokens, creature tokens, clue tokens, etc. There's artifacts all over. There's a lot of +1/+1 counters, and then there's lots of things about the graveyard, discarding, madness, etc. Secondly, we have the fixing in the set. And there's a lot of fixing because of the basic land cycling in every color. These 5 cards are really good. They can always be your 23rd card and helps you fix and play a 3rd color, even though you're not playing green. So that's really nice. You should look for these if it's your sealed, you want to play more colors, or in draft. These are always great picks. There's also the Ornithopter, which is a really nice card for fixing. So in general, fixing is just abundant in this format. It's really easy to play 3 colors if you're a more slower mid-range control deck. But there's still like fixing in green. You have Riftsoar, which is an excellent card. So it's primarily based in green, but every color in this set, because of the basic land cycling, has access to fixing. And be aware, if you're splashing red and playing, thinking you can use Battle Plan for that, it requires a red. So you can only do it if it's one of your main colors, and then it helps you splash your 3rd color. There's also the artifact lands, and the artifact lands are really nice and enable splashing. They are in all color pairs. And the reason why they're indestructible is because this is which we'll get to in a second, it's much of an artifact set. So it wouldn't be nice if your opponent could just destroy your lands with artifact destruction. So that's the reason why they're indestructible. But remember, and we'll see this when we get down to some of the archetypes, and then you can use that these are artifacts lands for your own purpose. You can sacrifice them, and they count as artifacts towards affinity for artifacts and other stuff like that. So the only way you're really getting punished is by this uncommon equipment that people are playing that gives artifact landwalk. So if you're playing like a 4 or 5 color deck, people can just have unblockable for all the creatures. So you need to be able to answer this. And if you're just playing a 2 color deck, maybe you're just playing 1. You can maybe side it out, but just be aware that you're usually not punished for playing these artifact lands. It's just good fixing, but you can be punished in some instances. Next, we'll talk about that this is an artifact set. Artifacts are all over, and there's also some enchantments. So there's plenty of artifact and enchant removal, and compared to other sets, you need to know that the artifact and enchant removal is main deckable. There's artifact and enchantment creatures. They're very important artifact and enchantments. So these 3 cards, Crack Open, Foundation Breaker, Break Ties, I would all main deck because they are very useful in many situations. Mock Salvage is fine, but again, you can main deck it. And then there's even cards like Liquid Torque and make something into an artifact. So if you play this, maybe you just use it to ramp, and then you can turn something into an artifact and then kill it. But be aware, because it's an artifact set, the cards like Bone Shredder, you maybe played with in other sets, is worse than normal because it doesn't hit black cards, and then it doesn't hit white, blue, and red card because that's the artifact colors. So it's really hard to get this to work. And so I would advise you maybe to start with the Bone Shredder in the sideboard, and you can always side it in. Otherwise, maybe if you're playing red-black, just make sure you have some discard effects for it. So that was just like the overall, and then we're going into every single archetype. So blue-black is based around discard matters. You can play blue-black in this format as a normal control style, draw cards, removal, but the main theme is based around discarding for value. And I think the best way this works, as I've seen it, I've faced it a couple of times and played it myself one time, is that this uncommon Mystic Redaction works really well. So if you open this in sealed, you can actually try to build a deck around discarding and milling out your opponent. I think this is a great game plan. And Fractured Sanity, even though it looks like a mean card, you can mill out your opponents, even if you have something like Zed to get it back. So how do you avoid not dying if you want to try to mill out your opponent? Well, you have some other kinds of payoffs. For example, you can ping down your opponent's stuff, or you make tokens. And then you need some kind of way to gain card advantage while you're discarding, because you can't just discard cards and you'll run out of cards and you'll just die. So having some of these, like Raven, Visionary, Jihadist Deploy, will get you even on cards or even card advantage at some point. Because you end up discarding cards like Master of Death or Shattering Augur that just come back. So in that way, you'll gain card advantage. Scuttle Tide is also good, which makes crabs. You can discard a card and make a crab. But just be aware that this gets you down a card unless you play other cards that do great things when you discard. So these are preferable, but this is fine and can be a good plan also if you want to swarm the board. Wonder is like maybe a backup win condition. If you have this rare, then you can discard it at some point and give all your creatures flying. But I haven't really seen it being a main plan. I think the mill plan is very real, or the more of the control plan. And then I just want to mention a few commons that go quite late. And then if you look at them, maybe they seem kind of underwhelming, but they work really well in this deck. So Loose Focus is a counterspell, and while you're keeping up maybe Jihadist Deploy to discard cards or draw cards or discard cards, you're very often playing at instant speed, so you can afford to have a counter up. Step Through is also nice because it has, of course, you can just return 2 creatures to their owner's hands, but the wizard cycling is actually really good because you discard a card while you cycle. So discarding a card triggers your discard stuff while finding your most important creatures, which are, for example, this uncommon and this rare, which are both wizards. Recalibrate is also a nice common. If it can be a 2-mana bounce something, draw a card, it's really nice. And this common is also just really nice. It's just a good way to make up for when you're discarding, you're actually drawing a card. So this is also a way to, if you're scuttle tiding or other stuff, that you won't run out of cards because you'll end up even on cards when you discard, or maybe you'll end up on cards. So that's blue black. Red black is revolves around the madness mechanic, and madness is just a mechanic that says when you discard, instead of discarding it, you can play it. So usually you discard either these cards, maybe it's a busted rare, or it's just great commons that are better power and toughness for their value if you madness them in. So it's, and then you discard them for value. So either either these creatures, these two are really good, or this great removal spell. And then you discard them on some cards that it would normally be a disadvantage to discard them, but when you discard, it's positive for you. So it could be Bone Shards as a removal spell, it could be this Reckless Headliner, or the Underworld Cookbook, whatever it is. It's just it works quite great. So you need to have these enablers, things that discard, and then you need to have the madness payoffs. I want to highlight the Fast and Furious and Faceless Salvaging has this text where it says discard and draw. So be aware that even if you don't have cards in hand, you can use it, and then you'll draw 2 cards if you don't have a card in hand. And here you can also draw a card if you don't have a card in hand. It's not a cost to discard here, but otherwise these are just things. The Underworld Cookbook, Fast Furious, or this 2-drop helps you enable your madness synergies. So this is a really nice deck. You can also use this rare that I don't want to try to pronounce. It's just a great 3/3, and it's of course amazing with the Underworld Cookbook. But if you're playing sealed, you're probably not opening the 2. And if you're in draft, if you have these 2, that's a really great combo. And again, yeah, the as I mentioned before, the Guildbreak Provoker works really well in this deck. Just to draw cards whenever you discard. And I want just lastly, this is a value deck. You have a lot of removal, you have great creatures, and this is one of the best creatures in the set, one of the best uncommons in the set, sorry. It's just a great creature, so pick it up and play it in your black decks. I just put it here because it's really works really great in this deck, even if you have to discard it, and then you can give all your, like, a one-sided mini Wrath even early in the game. So Black White Reanimator is a deck that works really well as well. So you have these common and an uncommon way to get things back from the graveyard. And the way you get things in your graveyard is either by discarding basic land cycling, for example, the Landscaper Koloss, or you evoke the Soul of Migration on turn 4. And I mean, sometimes you don't even have to do that much work. You could play like the 2-drop that we saw before, the Capital Initiate, to discard and then get it in your graveyard, but I haven't really found that you need to go all in that way. I mean, you end up playing creatures, then you trade, and then eventually you'll end up getting them back, or you'll discard them for value in some other kind of way, like you invoke this, make 2 1/1s, or you basically land cycle this. So that's one part of the game plan, of just getting back your good creatures from the graveyard. Another kind of way is just grinding your opponent out. Breathless Light is an amazing common. It's just a flyer, and it triggers, gets larger every time you reanimate something. So it just works really nicely. It raises very well. So you can play something like Violent Tuber to go get something and put it in your graveyard to reanimate it. But usually it's not needed. But the way sometimes I've liked it, if I have something like Scour of the Desert, where you can exile a card from your graveyard and then you make 1/1 birds equal to its toughness. So you can put Landscaper Colossus in your graveyard if you haven't land cycled it, and then you make 6 1/1s. So that's pretty good. And the way this deck plays out is usually, you have a lot of 1/1 tokens. So I found this 4-drop actually to be really nice, where it just grows really fast, and like if your opponent wants to trade with your 1/1s, this grows. And then I just want to mention a combo. We're also coming back to it, but because Breathless Night triggers every time something comes in, this enchantment works really well. So if you're leaning more white than black, and maybe you're leaning more into the artifact theme that we're going to see that red-white also has, you can actually loop these artifacts for value, and whenever you loop them each turn, your Breathless Light will grow. So that's a really nice just combo, and be aware of it. It's common and uncommon, and it's actually a really strong game plan. So this deck works out really well. It doesn't require that many flashy rares. I haven't taken any rares here because it's not needed. It's just a deck that works nice with common and uncommons, but of course good rares will improve the deck. So you have white-blue artifacts, or affinity for artifacts. And I mean, this uncommon really makes the deck. It's a 4/4 flyer with affinity for artifacts, and then it has Cascade. So you just turn through your library, and then whenever you hit a non-land card that costs less, then you put it into play, and then it costs 9 mana. So usually you're gonna hit something great. Or sometimes you're gonna hit something great, but I mean, you can hit some of your largest spells. And I've cast this for 2 mana. It's very possible with this deck because you have so many artifacts. So the deck also just works fine with commons and uncommons. This is an extremely good common as well. It's just sometimes it comes down for, I've seen for free sometimes because you have so many artifacts. And the Filigree Attendant is also really nice. It gets really, really big. So, I mean, this deck is able to produce so many artifacts. So these are kind of the payoffs, the uncommon and common payoffs. I don't really like the Whale. The rest of these are fine. The Whale has been, I mean, you can play the Whale. It's fine. It's just a 3/4. But the thing about untapping doesn't really matter that much. It's fine. It helps you raise so you can attack, and then you sometimes play an artifact after combat and then it untaps. But I mean, mostly it's these cards that make up the deck, and sometimes the Extruder. You can have really great rares. You don't need to, but these are just great rares. So take them if you see them, or if you open them, you're in your seal pool, great. But I mean, the deck can actually operate just with commons and uncommons. And this is also a deck, because of the affinity for artifacts, that you really can utilize the artifact lands. Of course, the uncolor artifact lands, but also the red ones are good because red also has artifacts. You can also play, like, I wouldn't advise you to play a complete off-color artifact lands, but if they just have, like, it's a blue-green land, maybe, yeah, you could maybe play that just to get your artifact count higher. Playing this earlier. But just be aware that the artifact lands are really good if you're drafting, maybe take them earlier. And if you're sealed, maybe convince yourself if you're not extremely aggressive, maybe play a few of these just if you have a lot of affinity cards. And then, I mean, the deck plays out really well. I mean, this is a great common that just spits out 1/1 artifacts whenever you play something with mana value 4 or greater. So, I mean, all your payoffs mostly that has affinity trigger this, even though you're playing them for cheap. Barbed Spikes is nice because it pops out 2 artifacts. And then you can lean into the modular theme. The modular is when something dies with an artifact count, or if an artifact dies, it has counters on it, and it moves its counters to another artifact. So this is what red-white is about. Red-white is about, that we'll talk about in a second. And this deck can also lean into that. But yeah, I mean, it's just fine. You're just playing fine artifact creatures, or Chrome Courier here that's just replacing itself, finding another artifact. So the deck works really well. It's a strong deck. It's a fun deck to play. Yep. So blue-green tokens is one of my... at the moment, it's one of the decks that I think are the strongest in the format. It just has so many payoffs, and the payoffs at uncommon are also just crazy. So I've highlighted a few uncommons and some rares and some commons down here below. But these uncommons, they can make the deck for themselves. Junkwinder is really, really great. You just have so many ways of producing tokens, and this you don't. Oh, should I play squirrel tokens? No, it's not really that. It's just you'll accidentally make treasure tokens or clue tokens. And I mean, these build around like artifacts, enchantments, work really, really great. Like Combined Chrysalis is a bomb if you have just a fine deck where it's not just your creature tokens you can turn into 4/4 flyers. It's any token. So it's just a food token, it's a clue token. So this is a great card if you just have, generally just play blue and green cards and this will end up happening. But this is a great card and it can just be the way you win in this deck. Fey Offering is also a really, really good card that has impressed me a lot. So you have to play a non-creature and a creature to make a food, a treasure, and a clue. So you can draw, gain 3 life, and then make some mana. And in the early game, you're really happy just making some mana or drawing cards. And in the late game, you have this in play, and then you'll start making 4/4 flyers out of the tokens, or you'll just tap down 3 of the opponent's things if you have Junkwinder in play. So I mean, this just is an amazing game plan if you have some of these artifacts and enchantments. But the deck does more than that. It has amazing rares, so you can just overload all your artifacts with this and turn them into 4/4. So you can turn all your artifact lands and all your clues and treasures into 4/4s. I mean, I've lost to this. It's just a game plan that no one can really answer. They need to have a wrath effect, or they need to be able to counter that. Otherwise, they're just going to lose. Cheeto Spitter is not a meme. It's actually also a really, really great card. So you're going to pump out tokens, and then you can also eat any token. You don't have to eat your squirrels. You can just eat your... Like if you just have some treasure tokens lying around and gain you mana that you don't need because you're on turn 9, just eat that and grow your squirrels. And maybe they'll also have flying because you have this thing in play. And then again, a rare that makes clues when you play a creature... And then if you also have this in play, it taps stuff. I mean, the deck just goes off really, really easy if you combine any of these cards. This is also a great rare. And sometimes all you need is just maybe one of these uncommons that make either treasures or food or grow and make tokens. And one of these rares or uncommons. And then you're good to go. The deck works really well. And then... these commons I want to highlight. Wave Sifter is a really, really great common. It's almost like a 3-for-1 because you have a 3/2 flyer and then you make 2 clues, so you can investigate twice. And even if you're on turn 2 and you have your mana but you only have 2 lands, you can evoke it if you really need to, just to get the clues. And these I just want to highlight. I mean, Floodhound is nice as just something as repeated value if you need somewhere to put in all your mana, and works really well with Junkwinder, just tapping down something every turn. And Hard Evidence is just fine. It's also a great way if you're playing Fey Offering to play a non-creature spell. So you just play this and then you play some kind of creature. And then you've actually played a creature and a non-creature. So, and it investigates, so it replaces itself and also makes a crab, and you can use the crab token to sacrifice it to make a 4/4, or yeah. I mean, this deck has just so high synergy, such a high power level, and then So right now, this is my favorite for one of the best decks of the format. Yeah, and just a side note, because we're playing green and we're making treasure tokens, this is also an easy place to splash. You can splash. Usually you're splashing red, but it could be a bomb in another color as well. So red-blue is delirium. And delirium is when you have 4 or more of a type in your graveyard. So it could be a creature, enchantment, artifact, instant, sorcery, whatever. And then something great happens. So I mean, Prophetic Titan is just a really good card. It's a 6 mana 4/4. So that's not really interesting, but it deals 4 when it's ETBs. And then if you have Delirium, you also get to look at some cards and put one in your hand. So it's just a 3-for-1 when you have Delirium, and it's not that hard to get. Actually, it's also, as I said before, it's an easy splash in the green blue deck. So this card kind of makes the deck with Stormgod's Oracle, which is just a 1/3 that you can pump, and then it turns into a lightning bolt if it dies. So these cards kind of make the deck. I mean, this rare is fine, but the blue red, I mean, I don't know how much I have to like. It's okay. It's not that difficult to make Delirium work. You can just play good cards. You can play this Mental Journey just to fix your mana and draw cards. Lucid Dreams works better in this deck than many other decks because you're discarding things and getting things in your graveyard. Mind Collapse is fine. Not only is an instant in your graveyard, but if you're sacrificing a land, it's easy to get a land in your graveyard, and then it's a land and instant, and then you just need a creature and something else. And then just also look for things that have two types, like an artifact creature or enchantment creature. That's pretty easy. If you have an artifact creature and an enchantment creature, usually you're playing an instant or sorcery. And then, I mean, what I tried to say was the payoffs are not amazing, but they're fine. So I think you should just try to play good cards, and then you can cycle a Battle Plan, for example, to just get an enchantment in your graveyard. That's fine, but I think you really want to, if you play blue-red, you're playing it because you have great cards, and like Prophetic Titan, Stormgod's Oracle, etc. The synergy is not why. I mean, it doesn't go off in a way. You just play great cards, draw cards, kill your opponent's stuff. So that's blue-red. So green-white is counters or proliferate, which makes extra counter, or it puts extra counters on something that already has counters on it. Green-white is a beatdown deck. It works fine with, like, you just have beefy creatures. This guy is really good. Remember, what it can do is that the other creatures that don't have a counter on it can gain Outlast, so they can tap and get a counter on it. But this has, just don't forget that this guy can Outlast every turn, so it just grows and grows and grows. If it's a board stall, this can Outlast as many times as you want. And then Captured by the Galaxy is just an amazing common. If you're drafting, you can just draft 4, 5, 6 of these, and then have creatures, and then you'll just beat your opponent down. This is an amazing card. It takes out one of your opponent's creatures, and it grows yours. So just play this card. It's great. And then this is one of the best green commons. It's just a beefy creature that you. Even when it dies, it's just a 4/4 trample. But even when it dies, you can put 4 counters on something. So that's just great. And then you just have other creatures that are fine with counters. And then you have some, again, it's not extremely easy to find places where you can get counters on stuff. Some of these give +1/+1 counters. I actually really like this combat trick because it just works really nice. It's easy to keep up 2 mana, and it's really nice when you can do both extra counters on 2 things and proliferate. But the deck just works as a beatdown deck with great, this is also a great 2-drop. And then you just use your Smellfear is a fine removal spell, but Captured by the Legax is just something you prefer. So this is, very straightforward. If you don't want too many nonsense things going on, you just want big creatures and you want counters, this is a great deck to draft. Or if you just open a seal pool with great green and white cards, I would recommend playing this. It's just effective, and it's a good deck. So green-black squirrels is a deck that revolves around squirrels and sacrifice. So I haven't played this as much. I've seen it on the other side of the battlefield a few times while I've played, and if you open one of these rares, maybe not the squirrel mob, but these other rares, I would definitely think about playing the deck. I mean, this is just a great black rare, it can go in any deck, but these two are of course really good in this deck. And then you just, I mean, what you want to do is just to flood the board with squirrels, make more squirrels, sacrifice them for value, give them menace, make them larger. I mean, the deck is pretty straightforward, and yeah, I mean, the deck works fine. I've seen it do great work, but I think if you want to go into the deck, I want to open one of these great rares. Otherwise, I would just play good cards, like having just like this 4/4 trample in the deck is also just fine. Like playing good black and green cards can also just get you into the deck. You don't necessarily have to be doing the squirrel sacrifice thing to play these colors, because black has nice removal and green has very good creatures. But the synergy is definitely there. You can get something to work, and the deck looks very fun. Red-white modular is one of the most aggressive decks in the format. And modular is this mechanic I tried to explain before, where if an artifact dies, I'll actually just read it. This creature enters the battlefield with X +1/+1 counters. When it dies, you may put its counters on another target artifact creature. So modular 2 example, you get 2 counters and then you can move into something else. So what this deck does is it can either revolve around, I mean, having some of these rares that just provide artifacts, or just buff up your modular. I highlighted Imperial Recruiter as well, because this actually has a really great role in this deck, because the modular creatures are usually 0/0s. So you can go get up, for example, this creature, but there's also a modular 4 or 5 you can go get up. Then you can go search up with the Imperial Recruiter. But in general, the game plan is very straightforward. It's a beatdown deck, and you just play on curve 2-drop, 3-drop, and as soon as you have 2 creatures in play, the opponent has a problem, because when he kills 1 creature, the counters move to something else. So, I mean, the deck really revolves around playing great modular creatures. Having maybe a Foundry Helix is very nice, just to sacrifice a land, killing something, or sacrificing a creature with modular in combat to move counters around, making combat hell for your opponent. And then just playing creatures, moving counters to flyers, playing this, giving counters to your modular creatures, getting back your modular creatures. And then again, Abiding Grace is again in this deck, as in the black-white deck, is really good with modular one-drop creatures, because you're getting back modular creatures that can either attack or chump block, and then when they do, they move their counters to something else. So keep an eye out for this enchantment as well if you're playing this deck. It's a great deck. It works really well. So I would really like to play this deck if I had the chance. So Red Green Storm is one of the archetypes that I haven't really seen work yet. I mean, supposedly it revolves around the storm mechanic, and you have to play more stuff in a turn and then get your payoff. So Hunting Pack is a great payoff. You make 4/4 beast tokens, and it's usually, I've actually seen it work best when your opponent does a lot of stuff in their turn, and then you make a lot of 4/4s while keeping up mana. But I guess you can make a lot of squirrels and then buff them up, or you can draw some cards, and then like make several different oozes, or play this ahead of schedule. And then how you do it is you play this to get your stuff to cast less, or you play free spells, or you suspend stuff, or you rebound things and play them for free. But I haven't really seen it work so far. I've been playing for around a week. I mean, the best decks I've seen with this, they just have great like red and green cards. They just play value creatures or great red and green cards. They don't go all in on the storm. And maybe you can get it to work. Maybe, have fun with it. But I would probably play red-green if I just had good red and green cards. I wouldn't go all in on the storm mechanic, but hunting pack is definitely real, so keep that in mind. That was all the like normal archetypes, but there's a few more, and there is a 5-color deck, the 5-color converge deck. So the 5-color converge deck really it revolves around these 3 common or uncommons. These are all great. The Epicure is just a beefy creature, a 5/5 for 5 that drains. You have a good removal spell, and then you also have this big creature. If you play it for just 3 colors, it's a 6/6 that can't be jumped by small creatures. Sweep the Skies is also nice. I have played it in a deck. It worked fine, but it's a bit harder to cast. But I mean, all these are fine. I mean, Prismatic Ending is, I guess, is a fine, or it's a good removal spell. But there's also so much other removal if you're playing all colors. So it's not really a payoff. It's just another fine removal spell. While these are most definitely payoffs for playing the 5-color converge deck. So with all the fixing that's where we started. I can most definitely see you going into this deck, and especially in sealed. It is very possible to just play a 5-color deck, and these are great payoffs for doing so. So I just want to mention there's also a green-white enchantment deck. We saw the green-white counters deck, but I mean, if you have these rares, and just exactly these 2 rares, you get to draw a lot of cards when you play an enchantment spell. So that would make me want to play Sterling Grove, maybe, because then I could actually find my payoff. And then these things become better, so we can loop the Sanctuary whenever we play a creature and draw cards. We'll just play Captured by Legax because it's just a great card. And we could even splash So Shiny if we're playing blue as well. I mean, there are plenty of enchantments, but the deck really does. The deck doesn't really work unless you have these 2 cards. So if you open these 2 cards in your seal pool, or if you see them early in the draft, you could speculate and try to get the deck. But it doesn't come together that often. Usually green-white is counters. And then you'll see coin flipping. Maybe you'll see this chance encounter where you can win the game if you win 10. If you get 10 luck counters on it. But yeah, you need to get lucky, and I've only seen it once on the battlefield, and my opponent lost. And there was, he didn't even got a counter on it. He just wasted 4 mana. So if you want to win, I would advise avoiding this. If you want to have fun, yeah, sure, you can go for it, and maybe you can get a win. But I wouldn't advise trying to do coin flipping to win the game. And then just to wrap it up, we have some 2-card combos. This is just such a value play. You suspend Riftsower on turn 1, and then on turn 3 you play Fey Offering, or you play Riftsower off suspend, and then you play Fey Offering, and it triggers on turn 3. So that's really hard to do otherwise. But it's just it's a great play because it's just a common and an uncommon, and it's just so much value. So this thing is kind of like a Splinter Twin situation where you almost win the game if you assemble this mythic and this uncommon orb. So what it says is whenever a land is put into graveyard from play, you make a 5/3. So what you do is you play this, and then you have the orb, or you wait by playing this until you have the orb, and then you sacrifice all your lands and make 5/3s. So that usually wins you the game. The Prophetic Titan is good. You'll see it often, so you should just play it. But know that if you see this rare, it's a really good combo with that. If you have the time, it's more of a grindy matchup. Getting back something that just repeatedly pings for 4 and draws a card is a nice combo, and you can just keep doing it over and over. There's also a few other wizards. There's the red wizard with Madness that you can get back an instant as a sorcery. But again, that's a bit slow. Here you're actually getting... you can put the Prophetic Titan... you can chump block with the creature and then bounce it and then play it next turn. this actually works as a combo if you have the mana for it. So I've seen it in play, and it works really nice. And then, as I've talked about a few times, Abiding Grace is not a meme. It's a really great card. And because there's quite a few 1-mana cards, so it could be this Mirror Scrabbling, could also be one of the modular cards, could also be one of the green, the green-black squirrel card. It keeps returning it over and over. It's just a great value play. So keep your eye on for this combo. I have actually assembled it a few times and won many games with it. So I would advise, try it out. It's fun. So that was everything I had. I want to say thank you if you listened through to all of this. I hope you had a nice time. I hope you enjoyed some. I hope you learned something. If you want to, you can. I would be very happy if you subscribe to the page. Usually our content is in Danish, so unless I get more positive feedback from doing videos like this, I could start creating more content in English. But otherwise, our podcast is still currently in Danish. We do most our content for a Danish audience. But again, if you liked it, please leave a comment, please subscribe. And again, if you want access to the document, see the description below. You should be able to access it and download it. So when you're sitting at your pre-release, you can have it on your phone. If you just want to scroll through it while you're drafting, while you're playing your seal pool, whatever, you can see what the archetypes look like. Go get it, and I hope it's some help for you. So thank you very much for sitting this through. Bye bye.